Hi, my name is Carly. I currently work at a post-production studio in Hollywood. I'm working on producing a feature that I wrote, and I crochet in my spare time. When I was growing up, I think our family looked a certain way. My biological father was heavily involved in church, and so was my mom, and we definitely strove for the image of perfection, and that wasn't true. That wasn't the case at all. I remember being objectified, stalked, and preyed upon in my own home. My biological father was controlling, he was manipulative, he was abusive, and he blamed me for making him act that way. My mom was a master manipulator, and I believed that I was responsible for the abuses directed towards me. My brother has autism. Growing up, he would physically abuse us, and he molested me. Even though it wasn't on purpose, or even though he didn't have malicious intentions, there's still the effects of what I experienced. I was in denial that I lived in an abusive home because I had this idea, it looks like broken bones, it looks like rape. And because I didn't have those experiences, I was in denial about the experiences that I was having. And I was experiencing physical, sexual, emotional abuse. I think both my parents really wanted to be good parents but didn't know how, and ended up repeating a lot of the patterns that they experienced in their childhoods. I was confused because theologically I knew that I was a sinner and I needed God to forgive me, but I thought everything that I did was a sin. I needed help separating my part and taking responsibility for my own actions versus the sins my parents accused me of committing on a daily basis. So, consistent with the cycle of abuse, I became the abuser. So I instigated fights and wrestling. I would invite my friends closer for a secret, and then I would just bite them instead. I started taking out my anger on animals. I knew what I was doing was not right, but I was in so much pain and I didn't know how else to cope with it. Where it just hit me, I was like, am I doomed to repeat this cycle of abuse that I want so desperately to be out of? I saw a CR testimony video in church and I thought, maybe I should go to that. And that Thursday was my first Celebrate Recovery meeting. When I first started going, I was very hesitant. I wasn't sure if it was an institution I could trust. I didn't say the 12 steps. I didn't say the 8 principles. I didn't say the serenity prayer. I didn't share during open share. I joined a step study, but I was very cautious about who I decided to trust. But I was learning a new frame of reference to filter all of my life through. I still had all this emotional baggage, and I noticed that I was using sex as a way to sort of cope with it. And it occurred to me, I was like, I think I might be a sex and love addict. So I did a self-prescribed 90 meetings in 90 days, where I went to all the different recovery meetings in Los Angeles. I had learned a lot of new language for something I had been struggling with my entire life. And I thought, wow, that was great, but I'm not sexually active and I haven't been in a while. And so I stopped going to my outside recovery meetings, which was a big mistake. I had to face the pain of abuse that I experienced in my childhood, and I didn't want to. I managed to do some of my worst acting out while in recovery. I didn't trust God to help me with my pain, and so I just took matters into my own hands. I continually searched for sexual contacts, sometimes having more than one sexual or emotional liaison at a time. And all of this was happening, I was still going to CR every Thursday night. I wasn't calling my sponsor, I wasn't working the steps, I wasn't working the program. And I remember sitting in open chair thinking, why come at all if I'm not working the program? CR was my only tie left to my relationship with God, and I was not gonna let that go. I decided to be radically honest. I became passionate about working my recovery to the best of my ability, and I started calling my sponsor and I started talking to my accountability partners, and they listened, they loved me, and they invited me to keep coming back. December 11th, 2018 was the first day I was sober in sex and love addiction. The following months, I did whatever I had to do to maintain my sobriety. I called my sponsor for 4 hours, drove 2 hours to the beach, spent the night in my car so I wouldn't act out. It was a time where I fought for my sobriety. I used to feel alone, but now I know I'm surrounded by a whole community of people I can relate to and rely on. I felt stuck, and what I learned in recovery is that I'm not stuck, and I'm not doomed to repeat the mistakes that my parents made as adults. God will give me the power and the tools to make a different choice, but I have to do the footwork. And if I'm willing to surrender my life and my will to Him, one day at a time, one moment at a time, He provides the hope and the healing.